Hey, good afternoon everybody. How's it going today? Hopefully well for you all. What's up with my peeps? It's been about 11 days since I uploaded a video. And actually, I've tried to start this video probably a dozen times or more. I sat in front of the camera, I got it ready, and just walked away. And it's because of life circumstance, things that I don't really want to talk about, but I feel I have to talk about. And this has to do with addiction, overdose, loss, grief, and understanding about life and death. We recently lost somebody in our family. Now, I know I haven't talked about my personal life much, and I'm not going to go into detail. But my son's 25, and his cousin was 23. She had grown up with us. I met her when she was about 2 years old. When I met my wife, my youngest son, or my oldest son, who's 25 now, was about just turned 4 years old, or was just turning 4. And his younger cousin, she was a sassy, smart-ass little girl, and she was just, she's a sweetheart. And see, I don't want to get into the details of her life or her personally, but this was her. And she passed away on October 27th. And we were devastated. She was staying with us for a while. She stayed with her aunt for a while, or her grandma. She moved out to Tennessee several years ago. And we visited their family a couple times and met in Florida for my wife and I's wedding. And we've watched her grow up as best we could. And she came back. She wanted to regain her roots. She has Native American, her father, her birth father has Native American roots, and they still do celebrations, sweat lodges, and, tribal type, holidays and celebrations. So she wanted to come back and regain her roots and stay with us for a while. The problem was heroin. And unfortunately, many of us have been affected by this. As many of you know, I'm a Kratom advocate. I have been since 2015. And watching this story unfold of addiction and overdose, and how much it's increased fourfold and tenfold in some areas in the past 10 years, and how we want to blame everybody. We want to blame the manufacturers of OxyContin, the Sackler family, which are now being sued for billions. They're going to file bankruptcy, but it doesn't matter. They've got hundreds of companies. But we can't blame just the pill manufacturers, although that's a huge part of it. Right now, fentanyl is the problem, and my guess is when when the toxicology report comes back, it will probably contain fentanyl. But do I need to tell you how failed the system is to help us? Without placing blame, Oregon, where she died, has the worst. My wife says she was looking into it, and it has apparently the worst track record for helping people with addiction in the country, and the least amount of available services. And she wanted help. Now, she was staying with various people for a while. We had problems. She got arrested. She went to jail. Alright, our thought was, as they told us, she was getting out in November. They let her out early, gave her the money on the card that people had put in her commissary account, and sent her on her way. She proceeded to go to her friend's house and shoot up and die. It's devastating. I was so heartbroken. I had no idea how heartbroken I could be over something like this until somebody in my own family died that young. And I've been so emotional over the past, week and a half that I just can't even talk, barely. I can't even make coherent sentences. And this is the first time I've been able to make a video and actually make it this far. And, I really want to express that something this simple right here can save somebody's life who's overdosing, regardless of where you are. This is Narcan nasal spray. But let me tell you, this company has raised their prices. Narcan is a brand name product. Now, naloxone has been around for decades. And naloxone is a way for people to overcome their, I should say, what it does is it basically closes down the synapses, I guess, and allows a person to come out of an overdose. It's a blocker, if you will. And this little nasal spray can save somebody's life who's overdosing. And they come with instructions. And, you know, there have been laws passed in 45 states, I believe, that allow people to buy Narcan without a prescription. Now, I would not buy brand name Narcan. I'd buy naloxone under the generic form because they charge $150 for 2 doses. This right here is $75. But what's the price of somebody's life, right? It's not just them. All these companies have raised their prices over the years. And one company in particular, I won't name, raised their price of their product 15 times, from something like $400 to like $5 or $6 grand. And people are having to, you know, because they can bill Medicaid for it and they can bill Medicare. And so these the people who are need it aren't getting it. And I know people have mixed feelings about these things, but I'd like to recite the Good Samaritan law. And the Good Samaritan law applies in a majority of states. If someone is overdosing and you seek medical help, neither of you can be arrested nor prosecuted for possessing drugs or drug paraphernalia, being in a place where drugs are used, violating probation or parole because of number 1 or number 2, or 4 outstanding warrants related to number 1 or number 2. So if you know somebody's overdosing, the first thing people are going to be afraid of is getting arrested themselves. And the Good Samaritan law protects people who take people in who are overdosing or call 911 from even getting busted for having drugs on them at the time. And then it says, please call 911. The Good Samaritan law does not protect you from, number 1, crimes that are not listed above, including drug dealing, weapons, possession, DUI, etc. And so yeah, if you're driving fucked up, then that's a different story. Or number 2, outstanding federal warrants or warrants from other states besides Oregon. So there are conditions, but at the same time, even if you get arrested at the time where the person overdoses, you can't be prosecuted. And there's an understanding that has to be made there. And I have to do this because, you know, it's important that people know that if you see somebody dying and you know that you've been using with them, that you can't, you know, in most places get prosecuted. Now, the exception is in, I think, 5 to 10 states, and some of them are like Maine, I think Mississippi or Missouri, or, you know, there's some of the southern states, but I'm not sure the specifics. I think South Dakota, but for the most part, you know, you're protected. And there are 2 lines of thinking on this when people overdose. One is that, you know, we need to do everything we can to prevent this because it's an addiction. It's difficult to break, and people can come out of it and be good people. And I've personally seen this. I've had friends who were addicts who were fucked up in the head, and they came out of it on top, and they're good people. And then there's the other line of thinking that, well, they're drug addicts, they deserve to die. And unfortunately, one of the side effects of this is that people blame the parents if somebody dies of an overdose when they're young. And you cannot imagine the pain of, you know, I looked at the statistics. They say that, you know, pretty much 0% of people whose child dies of a natural cause, their parents, you know, are the parents blamed. Something like 3 to 5% of children who die from accidents the parents are blamed. And up to 97% of parents whose children die from overdose, the parents are blamed. And this is unacceptable because you can love your child so very much. You can do everything you can to help them, and people just don't understand. You know, there's a term that always is thrown around called enabling. The idea that any addict's parents who helps them out enables them. And Sierra's mom and her dad, they helped them so much, helped her so much. You know, they helped her financially, they helped her any way they could. She crashed 3 or 4 cars. You know, it's the typical story of an addict. And yet, you can't help but sympathize and understand that it's not enabling. It's a different mindset for the person who's helping. The idea is that if a person has nothing and nobody wants to help them, they feel like they have nothing to lose and they might as well just die. The addiction can take over your mind, and, you know, what's the point in living anymore? If people are continuously trying to help you, it shows you that there is hope. And most addicts want to quit. You know, people are dying on the streets of Portland from not just heroin, but I guess methamphetamines are way on the rise. It was the highest rate of overdose from methamphetamine related, and something I wouldn't even think. Drugs are powerful in the way that they control our minds, the way that they convince us that we can get away with things that we can't get away with, or that we're invincible, or that we're greater than we are. I've had my addictions. I'm not here to talk about them, and I'm not going to go into detail. But I'll tell you that I know and understand that they can take a strong control over the mind. And I've seen people who have gone from being the most awesome people to being thieves, liars, charlatans, rip-off artists, and years later, amend their mistakes. And so don't let someone go just because they've gone to the lowest. I'm still mourning, and I will continue to. I had to make this video because not just for the other people out there who have had family addictions and lost people, because as I said, as a kratom advocate and vendor, I have talked to so many people who have thanked me for even, whether it's providing them with kratom or information or a variety of other, ideas and topics, or even just a shoulder, somebody to talk to and send a message to when nobody else will listen. They've turned their lives around, and that to me is so important, because every life is important and every person matters. So I guess that's all I've got for now. I'm glad I made it through it. I don't have a whole lot else to say. If you can get a hold of Narcan, and if you know someone who might overdose, and you can go down and buy it locally, you might as well. As much as we might want to use the tough love idea, once they're gone, they're gone. And when we got the notice that she was gone, we just lost it. It was the worst day, the worst week. And it will continue. But, when I was driving the other day, I thought, they say time heals all wounds. I thought, that's true. But there's always a scar. I lost my father when I was 15, so I know. There's always a scar. But more than just there being a scar, if you want to go to full metaphor, the most important thing is when you first get that wound, don't keep picking that scab. Let it heal. Let it heal on its own accord. Process. Don't hold back. Don't hide information from yourself. Let it all be known. Let it go. Let it process and move forward. And that's all we can do as parents, siblings, friends, lovers, acquaintances. We all know somebody who's been affected by opiates. Hopefully we can eliminate the stigma that surrounds it and realize that everybody needs help once in a while. Thanks for listening. Talk to y'all later. Have a wonderful day. For what it's worth, not to depress you, because there is a lighter side. There's healing, So, just keep that in mind. Talk to y'all later. Be well.